ranking NFL teams based on how bright their future is. Let's get into it. Starting out with the Cincinnati Bengals, I'm going to put them in the C tier. Now, if you're not familiar with how tiers work, S is the best, D is the worst. And some of you are going to say, how are the Cincinnati Bengals in C tier? Look, it's a combination of a few different things. Number one, I don't like the ownership. And that's not the worst thing in the world, but when you've got a bad owner, you've got a bad head coach, it exacerbates issues already on the roster. Look, if this was a Philadelphia Eagles team and they had a bad coach and a bad GM, you could maybe just overlook it because of how talented the roster is. The defense is abysmal. The offense it's good, bordering on great. It's not consistent enough. The run game is not strong enough. They have an elite pass attack with Jamar Chase, with T. Higgins, with Burrow, and or whatever quarterback is playing. But overall, the offensive line, it's below average. The run game, it's below average. The rush defense, below average. The pass defense, below average. This team's got a lot of money tied up in those three weapons on offense, in Burrow, Higgins, and Chase. I just don't see a bright future for them. They're not going to make the playoffs this season. And over the next 5 years, I don't think they've got a legit chance to do anything. Cleveland Browns, I am going to put them... I'm going to put them in B tier. Look, when I'm talking about the future, I'm talking about the next 5 years. Obviously, this season is not the Browns' season. Next season probably also won't be the Browns' season. They've got Myles Garrett, who, in my opinion, is the best defensive player in the league. Very good building block. We're going to talk about some of these teams, and they don't have the quarterback. They do have a lot of cap space. They've got some decent building blocks. They're going to have early draft picks. They do have all their own draft picks, which is important. So I think they're kind of a middling team. Probably in the middle of B and C, but I'll put them in B. Baltimore Ravens, they're in between S and A. I'm gonna go S. Look, you got Lamar Jackson, you got Kyle Hamilton, you got Roquan Smith, you got Humphrey, you got Wiggins. You got a lot of talent. Will this team always be dominant? No, they're not. They're not going to be the 2023 or the 2020 Ravens all the time. But this team, most years they will be in the playoffs. Most years they will win a playoff game, and I think they've got one of the brighter futures. The Atlanta Falcons, they feel like an in-between of being a C-tier team. I'm going to put them B tier. I think they're probably in line with the Browns. Look, the big question for them is Michael Penix the future? If he's not, then we've got some question marks because they're paying Kirk Cousins a lot of money. They don't have their own first-round draft pick, which, although I think they probably are in a better spot from a pure roster standpoint, the cap space doesn't look as good, and draft picks don't look as good. So the Browns' roster is not as good as the Falcons, but the Falcons have a massive issue if Penix doesn't work out. So big question mark here. If Penix works out, probably A. If he doesn't work out, probably C. Buffalo Bills, I'm going to put them in S tier. Maybe not as much. They obviously have Allen, and the Ravens have Jackson, which is the key part. Good head coach, good GM. You got some other pieces like Deion Dawkins. You got James Cook in the backfield, who's a young piece. Very good defensive line over there in Buffalo. Now, not very good at stopping the run, but they can get to the pass. They can get to the passer for sure. So I'm going to put them S tier. Look, when you've got an elite quarterback and when you've got anything else surrounding them, assuming there's not a lot of dysfunction, I think you got to put them in S tier. Carolina Panthers, look, they are looking good this year. Bryce Young is looking good. They've got Tedros McMillan. They've got Xavier Legette. The defense has been playing pretty solid. You've got an above-average offense, above-average defense. Nothing spectacular here. I don't think they're going to be really competing for Super Bowls. I don't really think they're going to be competing for NFC championships, but they're going to be a wild card team. They probably will be a frisky wild card team, maybe win the division once or twice. So I like the Panthers' future. Chicago Bears, I am going to put them... they're definitely better than the Panthers. I'll move them in front of the Panthers, but I still think they're an A tier. Look, I love the head coach. I love the GM. Wide receiving core is amazing. The defense looks pretty solid. Caleb Williams is a bit of a question mark. I would say him and Bryce Young look pretty similar up until this point. The Bears do have a better supporting cast. So I've got to take the Bears over the Panthers, but I still feel like they're tier A teams in the sense that, Maybe the Bears are more dangerous than the Panthers, but I'm not super high on them. Kansas City Chiefs, kind of in the same camp as the Ravens and the Bills. Look, you got Mahomes. You've got all those talented wide receivers. You've got Chris Jones on defense. You got McDuffie. Great head coach, great GM, great quarterback. If you've got anything else, you're going to be set for the next 5 years. Arizona Cardinals. I am not super thrilled about this team. Look, Kyler Murray does not look like he's going to be the answer. If you're able to recoup a first-round pick for him, potentially two, depending on which team you can ship him off to. Marvin Harrison's a good piece. Other than him, I don't really see any phenomenal building blocks. I think it's a below-average team. And unlike the Bengals, the Bengals might actually be in a worse situation because they have a quarterback that they're going to... Now, both teams could trade quarterbacks and kind of start their rebuild this offseason. But they both are in rough spots. Chargers could be S tier. They haven't proven it to me yet that they're going to be, over the next 5 years, consistently, winning playoff games or at least competing. You don't always have to be winning, but you've got to at least be a tough out. Justin Herbert's great. Jim Harbaugh's great. The defense looks stout. The run game is the focus of this team. You got Slater, who are going to be coming back next season. Chargers have a very good foundation. Dallas Cowboys. Look, I think this team, the draft capital, it's not insane because they trade for Pickens and they trade for Quentin Williams. But look, the team is frisky. The offense is going to be looking very good with Lamb and Pickens, assuming Pickens stays, which I think he will. And on the defense, they're building a very strong run defense. It's going to be a good pass attack if they can get the lead, stop the run, maybe get some more pass rushers. I think this Cowboys team, a lot of cap space, or more than they normally would have, and I think they've got a decent future. Denver Broncos, I am going to put them in A tier. Once again, similar to the Chargers, I don't think either of these teams are in this upper echelon in terms of future. I wouldn't be surprised if either the Chargers or the Broncos, more specifically the Broncos, only make the playoffs 3 out of the next 5 years. And if you're only making the playoffs half the time, you're probably more of a B-tier team. These teams, if any of these 3 teams miss the playoffs, Ravens, Bills, Chiefs, barring a quarterback injury, which, we can forgive that. If any of these teams miss the playoffs over the next 5 years, it's surprising. Broncos, Chargers... we expect them, we pencil them in, but we're not certain that they're going to make the playoffs. You got Surtain, you got Benito. It's a solid team. It's a solid team for sure. Detroit Lions. Now, I do think they are the best team in A tier in terms of currently. Goff is getting older. And, overall, outside of Goff, I think the team looks great. But Goff is already kind of a pedestrian at quarterback. Once he ages out, is it going to be Hendon Hooker? Montgomery's getting older. Got some question marks on that team. I can't quite put them in S tier. I am going to go S tier for the Packers. They're a division foe. Look, Jordan Love, I think over the next 5 years will be better than Goff. I think he probably already is. Kind of on that same tier. The Packers have a better defense. They've got Micah Parsons, who's a game wrecker. They've got all those young wide receivers. Josh Jacobs probably will still be a decent running back. By 2030, probably he'll be retired, but you get the point. I think the Packers have a pretty bright future. Houston Texans. I'm going to go B tier. Look, when you've got C.J. Stroud, when you've got Will Anderson, when you've got Danielle Hunter, the offensive line there is horrific. General manager is terrible. Nico Collins is a nice piece. When you've got the building blocks, quarterback, pass rusher, wide receiver, you're going to be okay. And that's what this Texans team is. But when the offensive line is horrific, when Derek Stingley is your only secondary player that can cover anybody, you're going to have some issues. Indianapolis Colts, I'm also going to put them in B tier now. Look, if Daniel Jones, I'm recording this in week 12, if Daniel Jones goes on to win the Super Bowl this year and sign a big contract and is just dominant and Jonathan Taylor looks dominant next year, then yeah, the Colts are probably an S tier team, and maybe we make a new tier for the Colts. I think this Colts team is a bit of a flash in the pan next year. They're probably going to be an 8-9, 9-8 type team. They'll be competing with the Texans, with the Jags who we've got coming up next. I don't think this is a dominant mini dynasty. I think they're probably going to overpay Daniel Jones. They're going to overpay Jonathan Taylor. and this team is going to have a above-average offense that costs a lot of money. Now, on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm going to put them in C tier. They've got some talent, no doubt, and I do like the head coach. I think the direction this team is going in is okay. I don't think Trevor Lawrence is the answer. Overall, we've got a lot of question marks. Where's the high-end talent? You've got Hunter, who's a good piece. You've got Josh Allen, who is a good piece. Really, where's the elite talent? You've got Brian Thomas. Once again, these feel like good players. You've got a lot of good players. When you've got a lot of good players, you need the elite quarterback. Ravens, Bills, Chiefs, maybe Packers. You need a good quarterback to push them over the hump. I don't think Lawrence is that answer. Los Angeles Rams, I'm going to put them in B tier. Look, Stafford is probably going to be retired in the next 5 years, so that puts a massive question mark there. They do have Jared Verse. Devontae Adams will most likely be gone by then. But you've got Puka Nacua, you've got Jared Verse. Those are good building blocks. You've got Sean McVay. And, I'm going to actually bump them into A tier. With those building blocks that they've got, we got to give them some credit. Raiders are in D tier. Look, I'm not a big Pete Carroll guy. Ashton Jeanty was an overdraft. I predicted it. I said he would be an overdraft. Geno Smith is horrific, and they've got him contractually obligated for the next couple of years. This Raiders team is dead in the water. And we have the Miami Dolphins kind of in the same camp. Now, they've been looking a little bit better as of recently in the last couple of weeks, but Tua is not the answer. Tyreek Hill is probably retired. You got Jalen Waddle. You traded away Jalen Phillips. This team, it leaves a lot to be desired. Minnesota Vikings. I don't have much hope in J.J. McCarthy. I love Kevin O'Connell. I love Justin Jefferson. We can probably maybe, just based on Kevin O'Connell and Justin Jefferson, maybe put them in B tier. But at the end of the day, you don't have a quarterback. You're not going to have a top 10 draft pick because the team is too good. You don't have, maybe if it was a quarterback issue, you got J.J. McCarthy on the Packers, I would have more faith in them because of the surrounding team. I don't think this Vikings team is quite good enough to overcome that issue. New England Patriots, I'm going to put them in B tier. Look, I know a lot of people are higher on them. They got Drake May. Mike Vrabel is coaching a pretty solid team. Overall, I think this team, similar to the Colts, it's a bit of a flash in the pan. I think the Patriots will be good, but you're playing in a division with the Bills. You're playing in a conference with the Chiefs, with the Ravens, with the Chargers, with the Broncos. Look, the Patriots, over the next 5 years, how many times are they going to win the division? Once, maybe twice, potentially 0 times, depending on how the Dolphins and Jets rebound. I don't think this Patriots team is elite. They're going to have to pay Drake May soon. I don't think Drake May is good enough to win with an average supporting cast. So I think they'll be an okay team. New Orleans Saints, I have really no hope in them. They don't have any building blocks. Alvin Kamara is okay. Chris Olave is okay. This team is dead in the water. The New York Giants, I am going to, as crazy as it sounds, I'm going to actually put them in S tier. I think they have their quarterback. I think they have their running back. I think they have their wide receiver. They have the defensive line. They're going to attract the best coach possible because it's the New York market. They've got a lot of money to spend. And look, this Giants team, I think they are, assuming everybody stays healthy, they are one big offseason splash away from getting an elite secondary player, whether that's someone from any of these bad teams. You don't need any more pass rushers, but one elite secondary player, and the defense is top 10. The offense is, I think the Giants, with the cap space they have, with the draft capital, they're going to have a top 5 pick this year. They could double up in the secondary, have an elite defense, have a very good offense, underpaid Jackson Dart, underpaid Malik Neighbors, underpaid Cam Scatterboo. I think the Giants have a very bright future. And their New York City foe, not really foe because they're in a different conference, but the New York Jets, I am going to... that's tough. I'm going to put them in C tier. They have some decent building blocks. Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson. They've got some draft capital that they got from the Colts. And I think, you know what, because they traded away Quinn Williams as well, I'll put them in B tier. Got a lot of salary cap space. They got a lot of draft capital. And it doesn't feel right to put them in the camp with these teams because these 7 teams that I've got so far, these teams need to do a lot to get into this S tier. The Jets, if they hit on their draft picks and can find a quarterback, they can jump into the S tier very quickly. Philadelphia Eagles, I'm going to put them in the A tier. They got the quarterback. They got the running back. They've got a lot of talented wide receivers. They are running out of cap space, and they also have to get rid of A.J. Brown. Or they don't even have to get rid of him, but he doesn't want to play there. Defense, they're going to have to pay some of these guys, Quinion Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, etc., Jalen Carter, all of those beasts on defense. So the team looks good. They are going to lose some talent, presumably A.J. Brown. Probably they'll have to lose Cooper DeJean or Quinion Mitchell. Can't pay 2 corners. And Eagles do look decent, though. And let's get to these last couple teams. Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm going to put them in D tier. You can get into a bit of an issue of being so mediocre that it keeps you from getting better. There's that kind of a cliche saying, sometimes you need to take a step back before you can take 2 steps forward. That feels like the Pittsburgh Steelers. Look, they don't have a long-term quarterback. They don't have... Really, you got T.J. Watt, who is elite, no doubt, but the defense as a whole, it's old, expensive pieces. Cam Hayward, Jalen Ramsey, got a lot of expensive pieces. On offense, it's DK Metcalf, who's overpaid. Look, I just don't see a future for that team to compete. Seattle Seahawks, I'm going to put them in B tier. A lot of people would have them in S tier or A tier. I'm not a big Sam Darnold guy. And look, when you're paying him all this money, and I don't have a lot of faith in him. It's just as simple as that. It really is. 49ers, I'll put them in B tier. You could argue A because of how storied that team is, with how consistently they go on these runs. The quarterback situation's murky with Brock Purdy and Mac Jones. They don't have an elite quarterback. McCaffrey's getting up there in age and gets injured pretty consistently. Ayuk looks good. Pearsall looks good. Nick Bosa. It's a good team. It's a good team, no doubt. You could definitely argue A tier. We've got 3 teams here. We'll go Titans. I will put them in C tier. Look, Cam Ward, if he works out, you bump them to B or A. Overall, this team doesn't have a lot of building blocks, but the cool thing is they haven't spent any money, and they own all their draft picks. So they're in a decent spot to rebuild quickly. The Commanders, this team got fraud checked this year. People were talking about them as one of the elite teams. They got Daniels, who is an elite quarterback, no doubt. He's a young quarterback. When you've got the elite quarterback, when you've got a good coach in Dan Quinn, the team's going to inevitably be competing when Daniels is healthy. And last with the Bucs, I've got the Bucs in A tier. You got Baker, all those weapons at wide receiver, Emeka Egbuka, Godwin, Evans. Defense is solid, especially the run defense is solid. Not so much the pass defense, but overall here are my S tier teams. These are teams that I think over the next 5 years they will be consistently competing. Maybe not the Giants. Maybe I'm projecting a little hard on that, but I think they've got potential. These are teams that I expect them to make the playoffs 4 or 5 of the next 5 years, not including this year, obviously. A tier teams, I expect them to make the playoffs 3 or 4 times over the next 5 years. So pretty consistently, these teams will make the playoffs. B tier, I've got them making the playoffs 1 to 3 times. So, 3 times obviously is good. You're making it more than you miss, but probably more like 2 times. So average to below average teams. C tier, these are teams that I think will probably make it once, maybe twice if they're lucky. And then D tier is, based on their current trajectory, they will not make the playoffs.